Big Bang Orchestra Eridanos, all about loops, percussion, and of course those riffs work great with all the different loops you get with the symphonic riffs in Capricorn. So those are always matching together, but you can use them on their own as well. Let's start with the main riffs at 120 BPM. It's always 4 bars. Sometimes you have different variations here, and this is the main riff number 1. So it's a 4-bar riff. If you play on C sharp 4, you have a release sample whenever you leave the key. If you play on D4, you can see that down here. It's very easy to see. You just have the release sample. So you can always end that whenever you want. You can get out of the loop very simply. Or just a little later. So that's 3 different ways to play this. Very important. Mix the presets. Make everything sound different. Right now we're just listening to the room mix and to the spot mics of the Taiko Big, the huge Taiko Odaiko, bass drum Tom 1 and Tom 2, and you see how they are panned in the spectrum to the left, in the center, to the right, 5 players making this rhythm. Let's just listen to the same thing with the stereo Decatree mix. Let's take the classic Decatree mix. So you see something's happening there with the surround to stereo. Let's go to wide surround to stereo. More of the high surround microphone signal, less of the Decatree sounds like this. So you have a lot of options there. If you want the Taiko to be a little bit louder, let's just go here. Even higher. So you can adjust that any way you want to. And so there are 3 different riffs with this one. You can see the key switches down here. G sharp 1 contains the main riff in the first variation. And you have in A the 3rd variation. You can always end it with the release sample right here. Now, of course, there's more processed mixer presets. I cannot say that often enough. Check out those presets. A little compression makes this sound totally different. Nice saturation, also a great preset to just achieve a different feeling. And a great pulsing preset. So mixer presets are important. I know this doesn't sound like much. Each of these riffs, that's why the whole idea is to make it match with the available presets you get in Capricorn. So this system matches, that's why the key switches are on D. But of course you also have a preset that contains all those different riffs or loops. And we're starting right here on C3 down here. And it is pulsing. Let's get back to the surround to stereo. Let's just take a totally different sound, distant surround to stereo. So you get a very distant feeling there. And check out the next loop here on F3. Next loop is on C4. Of course, if you go to the classic Decatree again, a different sound. And we're going on with the 4th loop on F4. And so on. Okay, don't be shy and go in and just say, I want the toms to be louder, I want the bass drum to be lower, and maybe the giant taiko not that wild. And of course, you can automate those faders. So this is fully automatable. We're going on with F5. And C6. Let's get to the surround to stereo, wide surround to stereo, more of the room. Get a very powerful architecture here. This is on F6. And C7. F7. So a very simple system for those main riffs. You get them in 120, 130, 140 BPM, and you can of course use it with velocity crossfade. Very important, time stretching. So if you want a different setting, I'm here with the 220 BPM. Let's just load in, let's say, all the main riffs. So you have a selection of the pre-rendered BPMs, 120, 130, 140. So if I select the main riff 1A, I have a source BPM of 140. Let's just switch off time stretching again. It sounds like this. Now I want to get in the time stretching. I have a source BPM of 140. We can read that. And now we want a destination BPM of, let's say, 156.7. Or I go the other way around and I want to sync this to the tempo of my DAW. Let's take the slower one that is already available here. I'm selecting the main riff 1A again. I switch on stretching. Now the source BPM is 120 because my DAW is actually at 108 right now. As soon as I sync the tempo, I see, okay, I'm synced, so I'm gonna play back this riff much slower. That will work with extreme settings. Let's just take half tempo. Of course, the whole room is also stretched, so this will give extreme results, great for sound design, or you can just double the tempo here. So a very simple system to operate. These are the main riffs. You have the stretching available anytime. And of course, you have those mixer presets. And we just listened to it with the classic room mix. Let's get to the compressed section again and stay with the double synced tempo. And you get great results there. So you can sync tempo, you can assign and adjust your own destination BPM. This is a very simple thing to do, so you're always flexible. Let's get back to the presets. You have main riffs, you have low riffs with low instruments. Let's just check those out and load in the low riffs, 120 BPM. Now, you always get orientation here in the mixer. You have the big and medium taiko to the left, the bass drum in the center, and the first and second tom to the right. So you have the full spectrum. Sounds like this. Again, different riffs, and we're gonna switch to the low riffs right away, just with the key switch. So now I have all the low riffs from C4 and just listen to those, but let's check out a different mixer preset here again. And let's take surround to stereo classic. You see that the Decca tree is open and my overheads are open, as well as the spot mics for the different instruments. So I can adjust the sound any way I like. Of course, you can also check out the reverb that you have in here. Maybe have a little bit less decay there. That's the first loop. Let's get to the next one. Of course, I'm now using no release sample here. If you go to F sharp, you always get the release sample when you leave the key. And let's go back and just check out what really a wet surround to stereo mix sounds like. So you get these intimidating sounds there. Let's check out the boomy processed sound with the next loop on C5. And of course I have the compressor here open. I can change the tag release time, I can change the threshold, whatever I want to do just to see how it affects the sound. And just play around with those settings. Let's start with the next riff. So these are the big boys toys. And we're going for the stereo decatry. Of course, the more you have those effects in your mix, the more you will get into a more pop sound, into a more modern sound. If you want the sound of the Synchron Stage Vienna, this is what you're looking for. The decatry mixes, the surround to stereo mixes are the most important ones. Next one on F5. Always 4-bar loops, but I'm taking the high road here. Okay, I'm just getting rid of the room reverb window here. And just a reminder, if I want to slow this down, stretching on, just get down with the tempo down here. Or just get faster. Or sync it with my DAW, no problem. And of course, you can not only sync it, but this will also do tempo ramps. So if you have an accelerating tempo in your sequencer, the loops will follow in real time. So time stretching is really a big thing here. Let's get back to the original tempo again, switch off time stretching. And you can see here, of course, the main riffs, the low riffs, and the high riffs are also designed to sit on top of each other. So you can mix and match them any way you like. And we're just playing with the F6 here. C7, the whole 4-bar loop. Whenever you want to get out of it, just grab the next note, the next white key, and you always have the release sample. And now let's check out the high riffs. It's really a simple library here. High riffs, same system. We'll just get into high riffs all and load those in. And we're going straight to the high riff all, so we have all the riffs of the high riffs available, and we can switch between sticks. And brushes. And of course you have two velocities, so it's always piano and forte. Let's take the next riff in piano. And of course, you can also take these samples and just load it into any sequencer, slice it up, rex it, whatever you want to do with it. But here you have the raw symphonic power of a great percussion section. And let's just kick in with another surround to stereo. I'm always sticking to the classic surround to stereo riff here. And we're checking out the next riff of the high riffs with the sticks. And you can see the instruments that are playing. You have a high tom, a snare, a cymbal, congas, and bongos that are playing. The overheads here, the room mics here, the same pattern with brushes. And of course, you can play around with those settings and just get out of the loop whenever you want to. And mix different settings. Next loop. What does it sound like with sticks? And this time I'm using the key switches down here. You always see them color coded. Sticks or brushes, I can switch between those here. You usually stay with one beta because you're not switching in real time. So your ears also tell you that this is something you shouldn't do. But of course, everything's possible with samples. Let's get to the sticks and the next loop. Brushes, piano. Let's just see what we can do here. Let's take, just emphasize the snare a little bit and take all the other instruments down and just play around with the settings here, just the spot mics. So you just have influence on the whole mixing situation, can make those riffs yours very easily. Of course, check out the processed settings again. You will hear the compression best when you're working with sticks. We're going to the next loop. Same thing with brushes, with nice saturation, just changing the mixer settings a little bit. Take in your face for the next loop. Okay, that snare is too loud for me. Just take it down, take the tom higher, maybe the cymbal a little louder. Okay, I want to have a little bit of the room signal in there. I'm switching on the different, I have the high and the high surround channels that I can use. Whatever you want to play with, this is your playground. You can do whatever you like in this mixer. You have FX lurking here that you can insert. Just use, instead of the compressor, use distortion, filters, modulation. You have 4 effects racks. All of this is hiding here in this tab. Let's get back to basic. You're very well off with the classic wide surround to stereo, classic surround to stereo mixer presets that we have here. Fits most cases. And we're going to the loop that's on C7. And F7. And with all the variation that you have here, with the spot mics, with the different room mics, with the overheads that have been recorded, and all these loops that fit together with the different presets, main riffs, low riffs, high riffs, you can just give a lot of energy to your symphonic arrangements. It's a very cinematic approach. Everything's rolling, but you can also isolate different hits and just make it your own. Don't forget that the time stretching feature that's just new and free in the Synchron player is a real game changer. You can synchronize to your DAW tempo and the riff will follow the tempo, whatever you have. Of course, there's extreme settings that will also be good for sound design or whenever you want to have some spooky effects. Just be careful when you're using the stretching that you're not opening up too many channels in here. The more channels you have opened, the more your CPU will take a hit. So that means just be careful with your resources. And if you're reaching a limit at some point, make sure to switch off a few mixer channels or maybe add a second instance to offload the processing load. But all in all, you have a tool for sound design and for a rhythmic motor that's hard to beat and that exactly covers what you're wishing for in a symphonic setting.